talking the next American sports pro.
The place you want to be. The hottest new that talks about what high school athletes to watch. College players that are under the radar. Semi-pro athletes that are getting a look from the pros. International players killing it overseas.
We're talking the next American sports pro.
Hey, do you have what it takes? Go to www.nextamericansportspro.com and register today. Exposure is the name of the game. If you can't be found, you can't be seen. Get your profile online and get discovered today at www.nextamericansportspro.com.
We're talking the next American sports pro.
Hey, do you have what it takes? Go to www.nextamericansportspro.com and register today at www.nextamericansportspro.com.
You are now listening to the Backyard Brawl podcast. And here's your host, Todd Worly.
Hello and welcome to the Backyard Brawl podcast. I'm Todd Worly, and joining me in the studio is Memphis Spence. He's a voter for 10 of the 24 National College Football Awards and a senior member of the FWAA. Why are we here today is question number one. Okay, so I've been working, I'm a pro football scout. I've been working in the CFL, the XFL, the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl, and have had many, if not all, of the MAC schools in my area at one time or another. I've grown a vast appreciation for the quality of football being played there, the quality of people being played there, and really want to help those players, schools, and coaches and staff gain some more exposure. A lot of the bigger conferences have their own networks devoted to them. Why doesn't the MAC have one? It's time to do that now. And we're here to take you inside every MAC football program. We're your one-stop shop for inside information on MAC football here at the Backyard Brawl. We have connected with 7 of the 12 beat writers across the MAC. And over the last 24 hours, we've been compiling interviews with them, and we're going to share them with you here today. And first up is when you win the MAC championship, you get first dibs. And the Miami Redhawks are defending champs, 11-3 season last year, and went 7-1 in conference play and beat Toledo in the MAC championship game. Joining us today is Chris Vogt. He's a beat writer covering Miami athletics for the Journal News and the Report Ohio, which is located in Butler County, Ohio. Walk us through what's the vibe and the outlook heading into the 2024 season inside the program right now.
Yeah, Todd, right now, just by seeing what's been going on the last couple of weeks, there's been excitement, it's a refreshed vibe. They're focused. I think if you kind of describe the fall camp, it's a couple reasons why it's like that. And that's because, one, you've got your starting quarterback back. And anytime something like that happens to you the year prior, you get your guy back. You're always kind of refreshed when that happens. But when I say refreshed, you still won the MAC. But the guy who ran the offense last year, that should have been running the offense last year, is back. You've got the bulk of your defense returning. I'd imagine you'd say that they're probably a top 10 defense coming into the 2024 season, preseason-wise. And then, a lot of the attention is going to be on the offensive line. You've returned 4 of your 5 starters back. So that we'll touch on more later, but number 4, basically the important reason is you're MAC champions. And I think that's one of the reasons why Miami's ready to go.
Nice. Okay. I know the transfer portal is a huge hot topic in college football these days. So want to ask you about the Graham Nicholson situation, what Chuck Martin has said about it, and what Kalen DeBoer has said about it, and what you've understood and what you've heard within the program.
Yeah, well, on our end, we didn't really touch much on it just because it hit national news, and it's one of those things where, like, well, national news touches it. Okay, here's the thing: if NCAA is going to touch it, then I think we're going to step in. But Graham Nicholson, he left for Alabama, and I'm gonna. I mean, just like Chuck had basically said, he's calling spade. He's a straight shooter. So with all that coming out, there's two things that you can kind of look at from this. Martin says this just because he felt like it happened. And then number two is there's a kind of, you kind of look at how the transfer portal operated. Nicholson hops in December. He hops back out, hops back in the spring portal, and then 2 days later he's signed. So, do I say, Coach Martin, he's never off his rocker because he's a straight shooter, but there's a reason why he's saying that. Do I back him up on that? You know what? Hey, if NCAA is going to come up and say something about it and look into it, then awesome. But it's Alabama, and I'd imagine it's probably going to be no. They probably won't look into it. just my opinion.
Gotcha. Have there been any other key departures or arrivals from the transfer portal?
Yeah, and I was going to hit on that too with Gage Larvadan. He ended up going to South Carolina. That's going to be a huge hit for them. I think it's going to make the offense a little bit, I guess, look a little bit different. But Larvadan, he left, and then Rashad Amos, which was the main reason why I think, Miami won the MAC, is Rashad took over. The ball was going to be put in his hands. Avion Smith did a fantastic job of stepping in when Brett got hurt and directed the offense like he was supposed to. I think it turned off Miami's offense into a running heavy offense, just like Martin had said. I mean, you look at it this way. Miami had to operate a completely different offense compared to what Brett was running, and that's, the shotgun, and Avion Smith was more of the shotgun read. And so you look at those guys who left. That's going to be a kind of a big question mark there. But, Miami's got some guys that'll step in as well. But then Avion Smith leaving to Alabama A&M, which I expected him to. I think he knew that Gabbert was going to be coming back. Avion Smith proved himself to be a starter. And if Gabbert was coming back, he wasn't going to start. So I think Avion Smith probably made the right choice there to say, hey, if I want to continue to play and start and make a difference on somebody's team, it's going to probably be elsewhere. So I think those are the big three hits. Defense not hit as much. You're going to see the bulkier defense back for Miami, which is going to be their main.
Awesome info there from Chris. Playing against Miami of Ohio in the MAC championship game last year was the Toledo Rockets. And Toledo, yes, they lost Quinyon Mitchell, first-round draft pick cornerback. But every single year Toledo is going to have some guys on their team that can play. And they're going to be talented. They're going to be in the mix. Joining us next is Kyle Rowland. He's a college sports reporter for the Toledo Blade. So you mentioned Quinyon Mitchell, but then I previously worked as the Midwest area scout for the NFLPA Collegiate Bowl. In the 2022 game, we had Sam Womack out there. Yeah. You have Sam Womack, Tyson Anderson, Logan Woodside before that, Deontay Johnson. The list goes on. How did they get those guys on campus? How do they get them to stay? And then those guys are studs that could start for just about any Power 5 program in the country.
Yeah, I mean, it's remarkable. It really is. I mean, it's something I've talked about and written about a lot. It never gets old being incredible, really, because a lot of those guys weren't great recruits. I mean, first of all, I guess it's obvious because they ended up going to Toledo and not Ohio State or Michigan or wherever. But they didn't have a lot of offers outside of Toledo. I mean, number one is Toledo's got an unbelievable ability to evaluate high school talent. I mean, they definitely don't fall into the trap of like, hey, let's see which kind of group of 5 guys in Ohio or Michigan or Pennsylvania have a bunch of similar offers. We're going to offer them too. I mean, they kind of do their own thing. And it's like, hey, everyone else doesn't really see anything in this guy, but like we believe in what we see and we're offering them and we're bringing them and we're developing them. And they've just done an unbelievable job at it. And you're seeing, I mean, anyone who talks to these recruits or guys when they leave, like whether it's Quinyon Mitchell, who obviously could have gone to Alabama, as Nick Saban said at the NFL draft, like the culture at Toledo, it's like a real thing. Like it's not just, hey, we're just going to give these quotes about how great our culture is because that's what people do. Like it really is a thing. I mean, Jason Candle's done an unbelievable job of building a culture that people want to be a part of, that it's kind of a player-led, player-owned program. But I mean, they have decent NIL, which, I mean, you kind of have to in this day and age. But I mean, these guys just really believe they can do it. And because they've kind of developed so many of these guys, now they think, hey, like I don't need to go to Alabama to improve my stock. I mean, I don't think Quinyon Mitchell would have been a top 10 pick had he gone to Alabama. I mean, probably would have stayed where he was. So I think that's basically the gist of it is, you know, relationships and developing the talent, identifying the talent. They know how to do it.
Awesome. Yeah, it's been impressive what they at the group of 5 level. There's a short list of teams that do it as well, and I don't know who else would be even on that list.
Yeah.
So that they've really been impressive. What would you say the biggest key is for Toledo this year in getting back to Detroit?
I mean, it has to be offensive line, I guess. I mean, the quarterback position I think is fascinating this season because I think nationally DeQuan Finn was pretty overrated. I think everyone thought he was way better than he was, but locally he was way underrated. So like, I don't think Toledo fans appreciated how much. I mean, people last year were calling for Tucker Gleason. It's like, this guy's like setting records and playing well. But I also don't think, I mean, Ohio State fans, as soon as he went in the portal, were like, oh, I went to DeQuan Finn. I was like, I don't know. I don't really know if he would be great at Ohio State. I think Baylor is probably a fine landing spot for him. So long answer is that's why I did not say quarterback, because I think Tucker Gleason's good. I think he's shown in the past he's won some big time games at Toledo. I don't think there's going to be some, you know, huge drop off there, but they lost all 5 starting offensive linemen. I mean, that is so difficult to overcome. They've got these transfers, some of whom I mentioned that they think are going to be good this year. They're the only team in the country that every offensive lineman on their roster, none of them have ever started a single college game. Like not just at their school, but period in college. Have not. Wow. I mean, that's incredible. So Mike Hallett, the O-line coach, certainly has his work cut out for him. I mean, it probably is beneficial that you have Duquesne first and then UMass. I do think UMass is not going to be a complete slouch this year. But you at least have those 2 games where maybe you can kind of get some continuity and cohesion before you play Mississippi State and Western Kentucky, which obviously 2 difficult games for Toledo.
Thanks for joining us, Kyle. You bring up a great point. Losing all 5 offensive linemen and being so inexperienced up front heading into the season, yes, that's a giant concern on one hand. On the other hand, this staff at Toledo has shown an ability to identify the right guys, bring them in, and develop them in all positions. I mean, I know it's a different position group, but you look at the secondary in the last 3 years alone, they've had Sam Womack, Tyson Anderson, and Quinyon Mitchell all drafted out of the secondary from a MAC school. That's incredible. So I'm not. If you want to underestimate Toledo in any year, I think you're making a mistake. So we'll see what happens here in 2024. Up next is the Bowling Green Falcons. In 2023, they went 7-6 overall with a 5-3 record in conference. Had a huge win down in Atlanta early in the season against Georgia Tech, and played Minnesota in the Quick Lane Bowl and lost a close game against the Gophers. With us today is Patrick Eakin. He's a sports editor of the Bowling Green Sentinel Tribune. Talk to us. What's the vibe inside BG's program heading into the 2024 season?
Oh my God! They are just. This is a culmination of 6 years for Scott Leffler. 32 seniors. They feel good. They're picked. They were tied for third in the voting for the conference, which is the highest in Leffler's 6 years. 32 seniors. That's among the I think top 10 in the nation in seniors, and just a lot of veteran players, and they feel real good. They have quarterback Connor Basilek back, a lot of good defensive players. A couple good transfers came in at receiver, and they're just good. And I think when Leffler came on board, and it was right about COVID time too. So, and then they're 0-5 the COVID year, but every year they've gotten better. They were 4-8 the next year, and then they were they 2 straight bowl games right after that. 6-6 both. 6-6 and 7-5 in the regular season. Lost both, but they played very well against Minnesota last year. Of course, they had beaten Minnesota 2 years earlier, and in regular season games. So I think this group is just there's 50-year players in this team, and they're more confident than I've ever seen. And Scott Leffler even says today, 4 or 5 years ago, it was a clown show. And I think one year, his second or third year, they led the nation in most first-year players, and now it's he's done a great job. I mean, we were a little worried about Scott when he first came on because obviously, he had his work cut out because even when he came into the program, they were decimated already. He had to rebuild, let alone having to face COVID. So, very confident. A lot of good vibe in the locker room, and just experience all the way around the board.
Great info. Okay. I know when you mention 32 seniors, my ears perk up. And I say that because in today's day and age, when guys have the flexibility to transfer wherever they want, that says so much about the internal culture at BG. The guys want to stay there because obviously you're not having all 32 guys play key roles. And so that shows what he's built, how comfortable those guys are, how happy they are, and how close they feel to their teammates and the staff. That's impressive. Yeah,
I totally agree. In today's day and age with the transfer portal, and I've been to numerous speaking engagements where Coach Leffler's been at, like the Exchange Club here in Bowling Green, places he goes, gets around the community, and he's not a. I think especially early on, he wasn't like all coaches. He's very honest and upfront about how he feels about this transfer portal and everything since it really kind of took over college football. He wasn't the biggest fan, but he says you got to adapt, and they have. I feel like he has. He's brought in the players the right positions. RJ Garcia comes in he's got a couple very good receivers. One from Auburn, experienced last year. Even Connor Basilek, the quarterback, was quarterback in Missouri, and then Indiana started there. And now he's thrown for over 9,000 yards. He transferred in last year. And this year is the second year at BGSU. And Connor, he's close to 10,000 yards passing for his career. And his numbers are just terrific. And I think that helps the program so much more. And then the quarterback room is there's plenty behind him, too. So, Connor did play pretty banged up last year. But, this year, he's got Camden North, who is kind of not just the backup quarterback, comes in for specific plays. And Lucius Anderson, who is a third-string quarterback, who came in, as a recruit and is kind of waiting the void because Connor and Camden are both in their final year of eligibility. So, I think Coach Leffler's done a great job with the transfer portal and the BGSU staff. And they made the adaptation. They of course, like I said, Coach Leffler, he was pretty critical, I think, and he probably still is. And I mean, it's just for like you and I, Todd, or like when you played, you came in, you pretty much played probably 4 years, and that was it. And we saw a lot of these final COVID players playing too, who were in their fifth, sometimes even sixth year, and that kind of adds to the mix as well. So. A lot of turmoil in college football nowadays. Then you throw in NIL, and oh my gosh, so yeah, it's crazy. It's certainly a crazy environment today.
I'm right there with you. Right there with you. I know you touched on it briefly, but let's dig a little deeper. Talk about some of the key additions and departures for Bowling Green in the transfer portal this offseason.
Well, RJ Garcia is one of them, and there's actually a couple receivers, and they are the biggest additions. I think this year, I think a lot of those additions came in last year. A lot of them came in last year, and so this year you pretty much have a group of guys that have played together. So I don't think there's a lot of transfer additions this year. Even there really aren't a lot. RJ Garcia, the receiver room had to be replaced a little bit. I think a little bit in the linebacker position, but you still have a lot of fourth and fifth year guys there as well, like Brock Horn. And then you've got and on defense you've got outside linebacker, you got Demetrius Hardiman, who didn't transfer in but was injured most of the year last year. And at the receiver position, it's just unbelievable. You got Finn Hogan, who had that unbelievable catch. I don't know if you remember that early last year. That was kind of a highlight reel on all the major networks. And you've got Josh Harris's son. Josh Harris was a quarterback in Urban Meyer days at BGSU, had a small stint in the NFL with the Browns, and his son is also one of the receivers. And of course, we can't forget at the tight end position, Harold Fanning and Levi Gazarek, just two experienced tight ends. So I don't think there's a lot of transfers this year. I think a lot of them have been coming into the program. I think been building, like I said, Connor Bazelak and Camden North were both transfers when they arrived at BGSU. The 1 and 2 quarterbacks.
That was a good lengthy interview there. And I don't know. What did you think of that, Todd?
It's so impressive what BG has done there. If you look at the amount of talent and depth on the roster now as compared to what it was like when Scott Leffler took over, they still have talented players here and there, don't get me wrong, but just to have more talented players and the depth behind them as well is really impressive, and it's showing up in the results on the field. And I think this feels like it could be the year for BG. We'll see. Obviously, the MAC is wide open. I'm not predicting anything, but if it's going to happen, this could be the year for the Falcons.
Yeah, MAC's always wide open.
Up next, we've got Northern Illinois. The Huskies open up with Western Illinois at home this Saturday afternoon. In 2023, they went 7-6 overall with a 5-3 record in the MAC, and highlighted by a huge upset win at Boston College, and they also beat Arkansas State in the Camellia Bowl. Thomas Hammock is the head coach. He's entering his 6th year on campus. Joining us today is Eddie Carifio. He's a sports editor of the Daily Chronicle in DeKalb and the beat writer that covers NIU football for the outlet.
Here we go.
Talk about, we kind of touched on it earlier, but talk about some key players on both sides of the ball for NIU heading into the season.
Yeah, well, I think offensively, it's Ontario Brown. I mean, they're going to go at running back. They're going to go as far as he'll take them. That's pretty much their offense is what he can do. Obviously, the line, you look at it on paper, it says 2 starters are lost, but also the 2 guys replacing them have made starts and have been with this program for a while. So the line is strength. Hammock likes running the ball anyway, and this year they're set up even more so to run the ball. So Ontario Brown is definitely your key guy offensively. Defensively, I kind of mentioned Furman. He's going to be big, leading the linebackers. Him and Jaden Dolphin. Dolphin, I think, has been here since 2020. I think he went through the 0-6 season during the COVID year. That is basically the year Hammock tore everything down after a mediocre 2019. He's one of the guys who's been here since then. There's a lot of those guys. There's like 28 seniors who spent their entire career with NIU. I think it's like 3rd most in the country, if I'm remembering right. But I believe Jaden Dolphin's one of those guys, and he's going to be a big part of that defense, providing leadership with Furman, who transferred in. And I think a guy in the secondary, Nate Valcarcel. NIU struggled forcing turnovers a lot last year. He was one of the exceptions. I think he's poised to turn the ball, force more turnovers this year. And obviously they're going to really need to do that this year to help out the offense as much as they can.
Good. So I know that the ultimate end goal for every MAC program is to be playing in Detroit in December. To me, from what you're sounding like, it sounds like one key X factor is who's the QB going to be, how's that guy going to play. But talk about what the biggest keys are for NIU to make it to Detroit this year.
I think it's the defense. Obviously the giant asterisk is Ontario Brown staying healthy. Just in general, staying healthy is obviously important, but Brown's got to stay healthy. And then I just think the defense, last year they were, 25th in total defense in the country. There were some, holes in that. Particularly the run game at times could give up some big plays. Like I said, they didn't exactly force a ton of turnovers. I think they were outside of the top 70 or 80 in that, more around 90. If that defense can still, I know you see top 25 defense and like, okay, how's it even going to improve? But I think that defense, if they're serious about getting to Detroit, it's going to have to be top 25 in a lot more than just one category. They're going to have to be up there and forcing turnovers. They're going to have to limit the run more than they have. I don't think their pass defense just on principle isn't going to be as good as it was last year, at least in terms of yards, because a lot of teams didn't throw the ball all that much either because they knew they could get some yards on the run. So I think that might take a little dip down, just regressing to the mean sort of thing. But I think everything else improves, and if they're better across the board in some of those key categories there, they can jump either Toledo or Miami and end up in Detroit.
Got it. Thanks, Eddie. Really good stuff there. We also touched base with Eddie about who the starting QB is going to be for the Huskies, and because it hasn't been announced yet, and it sounds like the coaching staff, which makes sense, they're keeping it close to the vest heading into the kickoff for the opening game. With the logic being, there's no competitive advantage to revealing who it's going to be, and that makes sense. As a former player myself, I totally understand that.
Makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah,
I give your enemy, what the game plan is prior to it. So yeah,
exactly. Up next, we've got the Eastern Michigan Eagles. 2023 saw the Eagles go 6-7 overall with a 4-4 record in the conference. They made it to the 68 Ventures Bowl where they lost to South Alabama. Eastern Michigan opens at UMass this weekend. Chris Creighton is the head coach, and he's in his 11th season on campus. Tony Paul joins us today. He's a sports reporter for the Detroit News who covers college football.
Let's get in it.
So historically, it's been so hard for coaches to win at Eastern Michigan, yet Chris Creighton's been able to really turn that thing around and do that at a pace that's never really been done in the program's history. What has been the key to him doing that?
Well, I don't know that you could point to one key. I mean, it's a lot of different things. Part of me thinks that, they found the right coach at the right time in Chris Creighton, who could kind of not be overwhelmed by the situation, come in and slowly and methodically get this thing done. But for the people that don't know how bad Eastern Michigan was before Chris Creighton got there, Chris Creighton was hired in 2014. Eastern Michigan hadn't had a winning season since 1995. So 20 years basically before he got there. The years before he got there, 2 wins, 0 wins, 3 wins, 4 wins, 1 win, 4 wins, 4, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4. I mean, just a complete afterthought, to the point where there were many calls on campus from the academic community and elsewhere to dump this program because it was such an albatross around the university's budget. No one thought it was worth it. They thought, just dump this program or take it down to 1AA or FCS or whatever. Just get rid of it and make it go away. And Eastern Michigan stuck with it. They hired Chris Creighton. It was a rough first year. It was 2 wins. It was a rough second year, 1 win. And then all of a sudden, it's been a series of really pretty solid seasons, led by a 9-win season in 2022, and 9 wins was the most since 1987. So I think again they just found the right guy who would come in and first build a culture. He's a no nonsense guy. If you ever met Chris, he's no nonsense. He is who he is. He talks straight. He came in and built this culture. You know, some of it maybe was seen as kind of hokey from the outside world. You know, he built the quote unquote factory at Rynerson Stadium where they had gray turf and every day was going to work. But he built this culture and people started believing in it. And, you know, slowly but surely, you know, Eastern Michigan, when he got there, Eastern Michigan was a last resort for players to go, right? If they had nowhere else to go, they would maybe go to Eastern Michigan. Now they're starting to be guys, you know, they're starting to be near the top of the guys' list. I mean, they're not getting 4 and 5 stars, but the 3 stars are, I mean, they're a number 1 on a lot of these lists because they know if they come in, they got a chance to improve and go to the NFL, as you mentioned. And they got chances to play in the postseason. They've been to 6 straight bowl games if you don't count the 2020 COVID season. They had not been to a single bowl game since 1987. So the work he's done is so impressive. And I'll give you one little other anecdote. When he arrived, Eastern Michigan football was so bad off that they canceled a series early in his tenure. They canceled a series with Michigan State, which was a big game and a big payday for them. They canceled it. Why did they cancel it? The athletic director told me on the record with a straight face, they were afraid that they were going to get hurt in the game. That's how bad they were personnel-wise. It was just a stunning revelation. And now here they are making bowl games every year. It's just really impressive.
You've got City, so driving guys 20 yards downfield and putting them on their back, right? Then, wow, man, that's amazing.
It's just remarkable where they were to. I mean, and let me just add this too. Chris Creighton is not thrilled with where they are. He gets a lot of credit, and rightfully so, for these winning seasons. But to him, he's like all I've done is win 6 or 7 games. I want to do more. I want to win the MAC. So he's not content, and I think that that's part of the winning culture that's been developed at Eastern Michigan is just don't be satisfied.
Sure, it's worked so far. Talk about so nationally. If I'm in the Power 4 program and I'm trying to turn a program around, and I look and I see Eastern Michigan. Okay, have they won the MAC year after year? No, but he has changed the culture there and done something there that really hadn't been done. Are you aware of any Power 4 programs expressing interest in him?
I don't know any specific as far as, you know, been deep in the weeds as far as trying to hire him. I do know from talking to people around the program that he has, because I asked a former star player at Eastern, a year ago, and I asked him, I said, why has he not gotten the interest that maybe, you know, he should have when it comes to getting another job or a bigger job? And the person told me, and the person very close to him said, oh, he has. He's gotten a ton of interest. And so as far as what those jobs are, I don't know. As far as, you know, the big jobs, I will say, you know, a lot of these power jobs, you know, they just don't. Chris Creighton wouldn't be seen by the fan base as this crazy home run hire, right? Because he's from Eastern and he's kind of boring. And you know how it is at the power level. You want some spark, you want some sizzle. And so sometimes maybe that's the reason that he maybe hasn't gotten deep into one of these opportunities. But again, I've been told that he has that opportunity and has chosen to stay at Eastern. And I do know that this offseason, San Jose State was very interested in Chris Creighton, and they talked to him. And Chris Creighton just said, look, I like it at Eastern. I got work to do. Yeah, we've won some games and we've won some bowl games and we made a lot of bowls, but I want to win a division and I want to do more at Eastern. So again, it comes down to, I think Eastern just has this guy, the right time, who wants to be at Eastern. And they haven't had that for a long, long time. A coach who legitimately likes it, Eastern Michigan.
Awesome stuff there from Tony. If one of the buzzwords in scouting when you're looking at offensive linemen is a nasty streak, and if you want to have, if you want to see someone play with a nasty streak, put on some 2016 Eastern Michigan film. At left tackle, they had Cole Gardner. At right tackle, Andrew Wiley. Both of those guys wanted to destroy you every single snap. Then on top of that, on the other side of the ball, they had Pat O'Connor playing defensive end. And if you ever saw the movie The Program in the 1990s,
Oh yeah,
he had the long hair flowing out of the helmet, number 99, I believe, and looked exactly like Latimer on The Program. I never saw him bash his head through a window though.
Yeah, but I mean, you would imagine that he would, he kind of had that little frat boy thing about him. So, yeah, but I mean, hey, everybody, like if you want to play line, I mean, really, especially offensive line. Defensive line is one thing, but O-line, you got to be nasty. You got to be able to, get in there, jab people, get them off there. It's all. I have no. I remember back in the 80s where it would have been thought of as something kind of little, what are you doing? If you were taking ballet or trying to work on your balance or whatnot as a defensive lineman, now all of them do it. So now and on your O-line, you got to knock people off their balance. You got to figure out exactly what they're going to do and really kind of get nasty, get into their heads throughout the game, kind of get them off their game in order to protect your quarterback. Who do we got up next, though, Todd?
Totally. Yes, exactly. Next up, we've got the Buffalo Bulls. Buffalo opens up with Lafayette at home Thursday night. 2023 saw Buffalo go 3-9 overall with a 1-5 record in conference play. Joining us today is Rachel Lindsay. Rachel is a sports reporter at the Buffalo News. She's in her 7th year of covering college sports at the News, including the University at Buffalo football program.
Oh, love Rachel. Let's get in it.
Joining us today is Rachel Lindsay. Rachel is a sports reporter at the Buffalo News. She is in her 7th year of covering college sports at the News, including the University at Buffalo football program. How are you today, Rachel?
Good. We're just wrapping it up in about 20, 30 hours. UB kicks off against Lafayette. They get their 3rd FCS opponent in as many years and are looking for their first win against an FCS opponent since 2021, believe it or not.
Right. Along those lines, what's the vibe heading into the 2024 season inside the program?
It was funny when first day of practice way back when on July 30th. That's one of the questions we asked, what's kind of the feeling around this program? And Marcus Fuqua, former All-American safety, said the vibes are up at UB. It's a very, very different mindset, very, very different attitude with new head coach Pete Lembo, who came in January, who took over for Maurice Linguist, who left UB after 3 seasons and a 14-23 record to join the staff at Alabama as a co-defensive coordinator and defensive backs coach. And there's a lot more emphasis in the program on making connections with teammates, accountability, being involved in the community as well. And Pete Lembo has a really, really holistic approach to coaching where it's not just about the football. It's about where does this program fit into the bigger scheme of things? And I remember the day he was introduced back in January, you just felt this different sense around the football facility, around the administrators, around the people involved in the program. Like, hey, we've got a new beginning here and we can really maximize this.
That's great. That's good. That's whenever you have change like that, that's somewhat unexpected, especially that can be challenging for everyone involved. And the fact that everyone's kind of taken it and run with it so far, that's good news. Yeah. What's the talk about some, obviously in today's transfer portal area as a MAC program and as a MAC program that just went through a coaching transition, talk about the key additions and departures in the transfer portal over the offseason.
Well, it's interesting. Let me back this up. We'll go back to the year before. One thing that surprised me, first off, the number of transfers that came in to play for Maurice Linguist and stayed, not just this last January, but from the previous January. CJ Agbana, who's UB's starting quarterback, he joined UB as a transfer from Southeast Missouri State in January of 2023, stuck around after Cole Snyder, the starting quarterback, transferred out after the 2023 season. And then in January, as players are leaving, guys are, give an example, Ivy League schools. You only get 4 years of eligibility. You can't do a 5th year. A lot of transfers came in those early days of July and committed to UB. Guys like Taji Johnson from Boston College, which is not an Ivy League school, but he had an extra year of eligibility. JJ Jenkins from Columbia, an Ivy League school. They got a lot of commitments from these guys, and then Maurice Linguist left. These guys all stayed. Pete was able to bring in some good transfers as well, including Malin White, who is a defensive lineman from Cornell. You might have read about him on The Athletic. He was named one of the college football freaks by Bruce Feldman. And another guy named Antonio Coakley, who's an edge rusher who believe this is his 7th or 8th year of college football. He's been at Temple, James Madison, Monmouth. Like, hey, if you can find your eligibility and use it and get a few more degrees, why not?
Live your best life.
And that was an area that Pete had said earlier. We have to, really build up an edge rusher and linebacker. They also got a huge addition. I'm kind of burying the lead here. When Sean Dolak, linebacker who led the country with 97 solo tackles in 2022, left after the 2023 season, which was shortened for him because of an ankle injury, transferred to Utah State for a semester, and then came back to join UB. And he's a local guy as well. So that really fortifies the middle of their defense, especially after the departure of Joe Andreessen, who just made the Bills 53-man roster, another local kid as well. So I would say, definitely Dolak, Coakley, Taji Johnson, Malin White, and JJ Jenkins, big additions who they're really going to have to be leaders for this team as well. As it's really sort of solidifying its identity in the final weeks of the preseason and going into the season.
Thanks, Rachel. That's
I could listen to Rachel all day. I mean, she was just a world of information, man. Just a ton of stuff.
She knows her stuff. She's definitely glued in on the program. And whenever a new head coach comes in, it's really interesting to see not just game one, but just how the team takes shape. It's one thing to preach culture, to talk culture in the off season, but then when the bullets start flying and win or lose, how does this team stay connected? How do they stay together throughout the entire season? It'll be interesting to see that. I think that's key for Buffalo this year.
Absolutely.
Up next, we've got the Western Michigan Broncos. Western Michigan in 2023 was 4-8 with a 3-5 conference slate. The Broncos open up at Wisconsin Friday night. The head coach is Lance Taylor, and he's entering his second season in Kalamazoo. Joining us today is Matthew Ayler from MLive and the Kalamazoo Gazette. He's a sports reporter that covers high school sports, Western Michigan athletics, and any other interesting sports stories from Southwest Michigan and the greater Kalamazoo area.
Let's jump in it.
Talk to us about the vibe in the Western Michigan program heading into Lance Taylor's second season on campus in 2024.
Yeah, I think, it's just a different sense of comfortability and familiarity, entering fall camp. Talking with Lance at the start of fall camp, he felt like last year was kind of year zero for him, and his head was kind of spinning at this time last year. So, there's just different energy and a different sense of confidence coming from this group. And I think that starts with the 17 starters they returned back. And then also they have 26 players that started in some capacity over the last year. So that kind of sense of continuity and familiarity is why, I think there's a different sense of just confidence and swagger coming into, this year.
That's so big in college football, having that continuity, and because not only the experience on game day, but that whole off season where those guys know each other, they know which buttons to push with each other in the off season and conditioning and drills and stuff like that. And then also in off season film work and conditioning and different meetings. That's a really key factor. I know the transfer portal is a big deal at every school, and especially MAC programs, both coming in and coming out. Who have been some key additions and departures for the Broncos this offseason?
Yeah, I think this is where Lance really attacked this offseason, and I think he had a great turnout. You look at some of these additions, 19 in the portal, including 12 from FBS schools and 9 from Power 5 schools. So really big stuff from Lance there and the talent that he was able to acquire. And I think it starts with, their work on the defensive line. They bring in Popeye Williams, who's a Louisville transfer, just a big bodied guy, and he was a former 4-star recruit. And then they also bring in, another Louisville transfer in Rodney McGraw, and Ontario Thompson, who was an Iowa transfer, who saw some time on special teams for him last year. So 3 huge, Power 5 defensive linemen right off the bat. And then they add in another interesting piece, Devon Bugs Mortimer, who was another former Louisville commit. Just, Taylor obviously was an offensive coordinator, back in a couple years ago. And so his kind of familiarity with that program and getting some of those guys from that program really paid dividends. Mortimer, I think, is going to be a part of their wide receiver corps rotation and showed some real big promise in the spring game. Just watching him, he had a nice touchdown catch in the back of the end zone. So, and then another wide receiver, Jordan Parker, he's a New Mexico State transfer, really a speedster, and he could show some signs on special teams as well. But I think that the one that went right under the radar that could really add a boost is Jaden Nixon. He's an Oklahoma State transfer. He was considered one of OSU's fastest players on their team for the past couple of years, and he should be in the mix for in the running back rotation with Jalen Buckley, who was a freshman All-American last year, was the MAC Freshman of the Year, coming off a 1,000-yard season. So I think he gives him kind of like a sense of speed and big playability out of the backfield. So plenty of talent that he was able to acquire, and really they didn't lose much. They didn't lose many pieces out of the portal. You look at a backup quarterback like Trayson Bourget out of BYU, and then CJ Hester was kind of like a backup running back. But outside of that, there really isn't anybody significant that they lost. So really impressive for Taylor to kind of acquire that much talent. And then again, not see many people leave through the portal. So that was huge.
Yeah, of course. Teams across the MAC have been giant killers in recent years, or for about as long as you can remember back. Big one for the Broncos Friday night up in Madison. Talk to us about the keys to winning that game and what you've learned about Wisconsin in terms of their strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, I think it starts in their secondary. Wisconsin, I think they have one of the best secondary units in the nation. So that'll be key, for Western, just trying to establish the run and leaning on that to maybe, use some play action pass and to give, starting quarterback Hayden Wolf some time to, find some receivers. But Wisconsin coming off probably a mediocre year under first year head coach Luke Fickell. I think the key thing will be their starting quarterback that came over from Miami, Van Dyke. I think he gives them a little bit of a spark on offense. But really, I think, for Western to compete in this game, they're going to need Hayden Wolf to show some explosiveness. I thought too many times last year he was just kind of stagnant and through kind of the intermediate routes. I think they need some more explosiveness in this offense, and to make a statement, early on, he's going to need to play pretty clean and pretty efficient ball for them to have a chance.
Todd, I mean, we just went around the MAC in 24 hours and we hit 7 key beat writers. Everybody knows their stuff. I wish we had more time to get folks in, but for the 5 teams that we weren't able to actually get their beat writers in, what information do we have on that for the preseason?
Great question. First of all, if you are working the media and cover one of those other teams I'm talking about, Ohio, Ball State, Central Michigan, Akron, or Kent State, reach out to us. The answer is yes. We want you on our show. We want to include everybody. So we're going to start with the Ohio Bobcats. In 2023, they went 10-3 overall and 6-2 in conference play. Had a huge win early in the season. They got to host Iowa State, which was a rarity for a MAC school to host a Power 5 program, and got the W in that game. Then they capped the season off with a blowout win over Georgia Southern in the Myrtle Beach Bowl. Ohio opens the season with a big one this Saturday at Syracuse.
By the way, I had somebody on my toast, Tony Syracuse said, and who covers the ACC, he said that this might be an upset. He said, of all the games that he could see being an upset in the ACC, the Syracuse-Ohio game, keep your eye on that one.
That's not a bad call. You've got, so for all you, if you're also a Big Ten fan, Kyle McCord was Ohio State starting QB last year. He transferred to Syracuse in the offseason. This is his first game with Syracuse. OU is also breaking a new QB as Curtis Rourke transferred to Indiana. Parker Navarro is taking over as a starter this year for the Bobcats. And one thing I thought was impressive when Tim Albin is entering his fourth season, and Frank Solich had a heck of a run down there in Athens. And then I think a lot of people thought there might be a drop off when Solich retired, but then 2022 and 23, both years OU won 10 games apiece. First time that's ever happened in consecutive seasons in school history. What an accomplishment, taking over for a legend like Tim Albin did, taking over for Frank Solich.
That's hard to do.
Very hard to do.
Extremely hard to do.
Very hard to do. Next up, we've got the Ball State Cardinals. 2023 was a down year. They went 4-8 overall and 3-5 in the conference. But when you look a little bit closer, 3 of those losses in conference play were by 7 points or less. And if Keon Magwood is an impressive slot receiver, and just so he's also a Columbus guy like I am. Went to Walnut Ridge High School. And if you haven't already done so, do yourself a favor and check out his highlight reel catch and run for a touchdown against Western Michigan in 2023, where he made about 17 people miss on the same play. And I haven't, full disclosure, I haven't played video games lately, but back in the day I did. And there used to be, we all did. It's something we would call in a glitch when you would have a ball carrier with the ball. There's 4 or 5 guys surrounding him, and all of a sudden he's on the other side and he breaks free. You have no idea how he got through there. Yeah. And so when I saw that play against Western Michigan, that's what that nickname, I think, stuck out to me. Keon Glitch Magwood. I love it.
Keon Glitch. That's perfect. That's fantastic. We should start calling people Glitch. You know, if they have a big play where they make a whole lot of people miss in the MAC, we're going to start calling them Glitch, the Glitch Award or something.
Okay. I like that. And then another thing to watch for the Cardinals, Kyle Kelly started several games at QB for Ball State last year. He's moving to the defensive side of the ball this year, though. Really someone to watch in the future in terms of pro potential. I think you've got a guy with the size and the movement skills he could, obviously we have to see him play on defense, but he could be someone that is an NFL player on the defensive side of the ball. Ball State opens up with a Missouri State at home on September 7th. They have a bye week in week 1. So they're not playing this weekend. One thing I think that's really big to mention about Ball State, they recently got an indoor facility, which I think is going to be massive for them moving forward. They did not have one before that. So you're talking about trying to practice outside or in a makeshift indoor location in November in Muncie. That's rough. And to convince recruits to come there and do that. And so they were still able to do what they've done in that situation. And now they've got an indoor facility. I think that's going to be really big for them moving forward from a recruiting standpoint. Absolutely.
Huge. I used to hate the snow in Louisville, much less Muncie, Indiana. It's just come down over the river for whatever reason. It just the weather dynamics. Once you cross that Ohio River, it gets really crazy up there, and especially in Muncie. They have snow like probably 20% of the year. So that indoor facility, once they get practicing in that's probably going to improve practices from here on out.
I would think so too, and hopefully it helps them in recruiting as well. I think that's going to be big. Up next, we've got the Central Michigan Chippewas. CMU went 5-7 overall in 2023 and 3-5 in the MAC. They open up against Central Connecticut State Thursday night. Jim McElwain's the head coach, and he's entering his 6th year as the head coach at Central Michigan. CMU returns a combined 17 starters on both sides of the ball. Marion Lukes at running back returns after he rushed for 737 yards and 5 touchdowns in 2023. And he's also brings some value in the return game on special teams. Joe Labus transferred to Central Michigan from Iowa, and he's going to be starting at QB for the Chippewas. And this is impressive, I thought. The Reese's Senior Bowl recently announced their watch list for the 2024 season in the 2025 All-Star game. And 3 players for Central Michigan made the watch list. It was Marion Lukes, the running back, the receiver Jesse Pruitt III, and right tackle Braden Swarthout. And to have 3 guys on one roster in the MAC on that watch list is impressive. We'll see. Like I said, the Chippewas have a lot of experience coming back. We'll see what they can put together this season.
Man, Todd, there's been a whole lot of stuff that we've hit in this show. I want to tell somebody more about how they can get more out of this show. The shows are going to be going longer, and there's going to be a part of the show where people can get advanced analytics, if you're putting a little action on some of the games, you'll be able to get more information there. Tell people about this Backyard Brawl Club.
Of course, if you want to be an insider and get some information, if you like point spreads, you like over-unders, you like prop bets and things like that, we're going to be talking about some things like that. And click on the QR code that's on the screen right now, and you can sign up to be an insider, and we will be digging deep on some of the MAC matchups as the season progresses. We'll be starting that next week, once games have been played.
Absolutely. And this is how you get into be part of the club. You'll be able to, there are kind of two different tiers. One of them is just pretty much information to use at your leisure. The other one, you'll be able to do Q&As or whatnot directly with the both of us on a monthly basis if you want to get a little bit deeper into whatever you're trying to do. So go find out about the club, scan the QR code, and become part of the Backyard Brawl Club this season. I tell you what, Todd, this show in and of itself is going to open up a world of possibilities for a lot of the kids in the MAC. I know that just this year, myself, as I'm voting or whatnot, I have my eyes on a lot of guys, especially, and I want to highlight this one guy because he's on the Bronco Nagurski, my preseason for my Bronco Nagurski award list. He's also on the Bernardic award list, and it looks like he's on the Jim Thorpe award list. That's Maxon Hook of Toledo, the safety. To get on three of these, there are so many people that can't even get on one of these lists. To get on all three, and I'm a defensive guy, so I'm watching all these. I'm like, well, hey, wait a minute, I'm writing the same name. Now, CJ Nunnally out of Akron, he's on a couple of these lists also, both Bronco Nagurski and Bernardic. But Maxon's on three, and I think watching these guys over the next few over this season, keep your eye on those two guys in particular. There are a lot of other guys that we'll bring to your attention as viewers and listeners over the season also as to who's on these lists, who to watch, who actually, has a shot at pro ball. Todd, you're a guy that really hits hard on a lot of other schools. You said we got two other schools. Would you briefly talk about those two other schools before we get out of here?
Yes, of course. The Akron Zips 2023 was a down year, 2-10 overall, 1-7 in conference. Yeah. It's Joe Moorhead's third season on campus, and they open up at Ohio State this weekend. Ben Finley transferred over from Cal and has won the starting QB position. Looks like the defensive front is going to be a strength of the team. And you mentioned CJ Nunnally, the defensive end, who was first team All-MAC in 2023, had 15 and a half tackles for loss and 7 sacks. I think from the outside looking in, I really see this program as a sleeping giant. You look at where they're located in terms of proximity to high school talent and the facility they have there, both the stadium and the indoor facility. It's amazing. I think at some point things are going to click there. We'll see when it happens. Lastly, we've got the Kent State Golden Flashes. 2023 went 1-11 overall, 0-8 in the conference play. It was Kenny Burns' first year on campus. This is his second year. They open up at Pitt this weekend. And from listening to his game week press conference, he's impressed and optimistic about how much the squad they've grown over the offseason. Unfortunately, running back Gavin Garcia is out for the season with a knee injury, but he feels like at all position groups they've created competition, and he thinks that's bringing out the best in each unit. And so on offense, he said that Devin Kargman recently won the starting QB job in a fall camp battle with Tommy Ulatowski. But so it's his show to run starting this weekend in Pitt.
And that's fantastic, man. We have to give shout outs and special thanks. Special thanks to Chris Volt. Special thanks to Kyle Rowland. Special thanks to Pat Eakin. Special thanks to Eddie is it Carifio?
Carifio. Yep.
Carifio. Okay. Rachel Lindsay, Tony Paul, Matt Ayler, and everybody that makes this show possible. We thank you. And I can't wait to the next Backyard Brawl podcast. What about you, Todd?
It's going to be fun. We're going to have a Backyard Brawl of the week for the game of the week. We're going to have a Backyard Brawler of the week for the player of the week. This is going to be fun. And like I said, we're going to get into some inside analysis now that games will have been played. And we're going to have a lot of fun here. Stick with us.
make sure to join up today the Backyard Brawl Club. We don't want the prices to go up. We've been talking about, did we set the prices too low to begin with? And if you get in now, you'll get that price, and that's the price that you're going to pay. We don't know if we're going to raise this price or not, so get in now. We'll see you guys next show. You've been listening to the Backyard Brawl podcast with Spence and Todd. See you in a little bit.